Alright, on a Sarcastic with part 3 of the Rainbow number 5 primer. Today I'm going to try to talk about playing against specific decks and just kind of playing in general. So in the other ones, I talked about how we'll sometimes go for damage, and sometimes we just have to learn to take what we got with resources and shields and accelerate. So one of the big things to take into consideration is that I'm very particular about resource management. So if I have two pay sides on a holdout and an F11D or something like that, and let's say that we'll say this is the round 2, we'll say I ramped up and I just rolled out Bala. Depending on how important that damage is, I'm probably not actually resolving it. I'd much prefer the opponent to spend resources eating those dice than almost anything else, because the more time they spend eating our dice, the less dice they're gonna come up with and be able to race us with. Because one of the more important parts is that because we have so much dice, as long as we don't lose a character, we pretty much win. It's hard to lose the game if they're spending money to limit our damage and we're spending our money to increase it, because then what's happening is essentially they don't have additional dice and we are just building up on dice, and then our removal becomes much better, because when we're stopping 2 damage from them, their damage cap was 4 to 6 damage, whereas ours was potentially 8 to 10, even if we string a bunch of 1s together. So keep that in mind. The name of the game for a lot of against the 2 character lists is to keep your guys relatively healthy while doing big chunks of damage. Sometimes I won't. He doesn't like you might die. So let's say I roll out a CN and I see +2/+2, and then the opponent, I don't know, rolls a Qui-Gon and hits 2 shield and 2 damage. I may consider swapping my +2 for their shield, but sometimes I'll actually just option to take the damage. Sometimes I'll try to stop the damage. It really kind of depends on what I feel is, or how I feel the game is going. 1 second. Alright, that merger's never the prettiest, so I just always spend the extra time looking at it. So there's no take all their damage away because that's how we win. There's no just output tons of damage into them, that's how we win. The deck has to be pretty flexible, because the game state changes periodically, so there's no auto anything. You could feel there's auto wins versus things like 4 wide and stuff like that, but if they hit you for 8 and kill your Bala, that entire theory went out the window. Because if Bala doesn't get to pretty much untap and get to resolve his dice again, it didn't matter. They could have traded 1 guy for 1 guy. Now you have a 2v3. You have 3 dice, they have 3 dice, so it's more relatively fair there. But you've probably traded 2 of your dice for 1 of theirs, so it sets you behind, and now you have less health. So you just got to keep damage and staying alive into your mindset. If you're looking at your hand and you have multiple cards that you're willing to pitch to a reroll, then you can go for additional damage. But sometimes you have to just gauge what's the damage they're going to do to me. Is it gonna go to Bala? Is the Bala gonna go to 4 health at the end of this round? Do you have a 4 solution in hand where you can stick it on him so that his 4 health is actually 7 or 6? These small things kind of add up, and it's very tough to gauge. There's a lot of reading that I do on the opponent, and it is much harder online. So the videos, the deck feels like it's just fine. In person, I like the deck much more, because I can kind of gauge what's going on via reads from the opponent. It's kind of like playing real life poker versus online poker. Online poker is a lot more statistics, less reading, kind of going based on what your opponent has previously done, as far as like the different stuff. I'm not going to start using terms because like then you're going to have to learn a whole bunch of new stuff. But like, long story short, like let's say your opponent online is always super aggressive. You've played them several times, you know that they're super aggressive and what they're going to attempt to aim for. So sometimes you can like trick them into going for more aggressive stuff because they would have expected you to already cast that he doesn't like you if you had one, because you had dice in the pool and you had like a blank. So it wasn't like there wasn't anything there that would be like, oh, he's gonna keep this die. No, like he would have already cast it, so that means I can reroll for more damage because it's safe. And then you like blow them out because you cast it, he doesn't like you, and they're like, what? So like that's a whole like leveling thing again. But in person, it's much easier to kind of see. You can see when someone's more nervous. You can see when you get like a good roll and their face makes like they pretty much twitch, like, oh my god, are you serious? Like I don't know. Sometimes you can see like the sadness in them, and then there's times where like Sienna will roll out like +2 and +2, and they have this like kind of weird look on them where they're deciding how to proceed. They have 2 resources and they're kind of just like fainting off the fact that they have a dodge, or let's say they have a 2 melee in play, they may have a guard, and now they're waiting for you to hit a base so that when you hit the base they can take the base and then make you re-roll and like potentially like whiff your entire round. There's lots of different like small situations that are much easier to see in person if you're used to it. So the deck does operate a bit differently online and in person. So you kind of just have to roll with the punches. Try to think like, how much damage are they going to do? Can you survive that? Yada yada. You can take literally 7 health of damage on Bala by the end of round 2, and be content with it, because usually round 2 is when you get your kill as well. So a gentleman asked earlier about Qui-Gon Cannon, and there are several different situations. So in the version that tends to go more like Luke's protection, a bunch of like fearless, bunch of little poke stuff, which is kind of going away because people have realized the whole fearless thing sucks. You would 100% go for Qui-Gon, because if you let them build up, then they'd eventually have like double Shoto or like Ray Saber plus Shoto or whatever, and it's going to be really hard. I do my best to not throw damage out. Like, so let's say Sienna hits a 1 and a 2, and Cannon's dice are already in the pool, and there's melee showing. He's probably going to guard right there if he's ever going to do it. So if he doesn't do it, then I feel like I'm pretty safe about guard not being there. If he has 1 resource in a range showing, he's probably going to do it right there as well. If he's not, like, you can take the risk, take the gamble, whatever. But sometimes what you do there is you don't even resolve your damage, because if you resolve your damage, now they know who you're hitting, they caution, do whatever. Sometimes you can get your opponent to essentially mess up, because if you then roll out, let's say, Bala with an upgrade, and you get to like 5 or 6 damage, you're pretty much forcing them into a tough situation, because a lot of people will immediately pull the trigger on like the caution, and put it on the guy they want to protect. So then from there, let's say Qui-Gon has 3 shields on him and the 11 health, and you have 6 damage, and there's 1 upgrade on Bala, you're probably just smashing it all straight into Cannon. The reason being is because 1 caution's already gone, and the odds of them having the 2nd caution is very low, so any sort of protection they try to put on Cannon is pretty much going to be through Qui-Gon's dice, which you'll more or less be okay with, because now you're not taking damage, and you still only need to hit like 6 in the next round to take out the Cannon. Taking out the Cannon removes 2 dice from their available resource or like resources sets, and you'll get the Bala untapped to then get you additional dice. So if you can put them on the defensive, then you tend to be in a much better position. If you're constantly having to find like base 1 dice because you've resolved like your 3 and now you only have those 4 dice, it's going to be harder. You're going to like limit your damage. and that can be quite tough. So like you really just have to get a feel for removal and different stuff like that, because some people will go and they'll take the one damage like off the table because they're like, oh well, I can't do anything. If they're taking the 2 damage off the table, that's normally the better way to do it, because you're limiting the amount of damage you're taking, and the person's less likely to re-roll that 1 base. I tend to doubt like higher damage dice. Like let's say my opponent's Qui-Gon is showing a base 1 and then a +3 on the ancient lightsaber, and now he has 2 more dice in the pool. We can make like 1 cannon and a Qui-Gon on a shield. I'm more inclined to doubt the ancient lightsaber, because ancient lightsaber is currently representing 3 damage. Off of the doubt, it cannot represent anything but 1, whether it's 1 damage, 1 shield, or 1 resource. In the situations where you have the +3 or the blank, then you get away scot-free with no damage. And for me, I'd rather take the 1 damage than take the risk of the 1 damage turning into, let's say, 2 via shield or damage, as well as the opponent re-rolling and then finding another 1 or 2 to then hit me for that 4. Because that's where how you start getting into like dangerous situations, and like too many people allow, like they don't just try to reduce the damage. So you really have to kind of play based on what's going on. The 2 blowout cards that they have access to are Guard and Force Misdirection. So if they have no resources, obviously Force Misdirection is out of the question, unless they also have a resource side showing on cannon, and then the range side. You can also get blown out by Force Misdirection if all of your dice just sat there and rolled resource. So keep that in mind, because you can lose 2 dice to a Force Misdirection, whether it's on shields, resource, blanks. You do have other sides that match up. Alright, trying to think what else is there. So like, don't feel shame if you have to go for cannon. Don't feel that hitting Qui-Gon is 100% the only available option. I've definitely made the audible, deciding that I could kill the cannon right away, and I can just suffer some small bits of shield damage into Bala, and I'll be okay with it. Because if, presuming that you're not running like into like Luke's Protection Fearless, which is like the actual issue with that old version, you don't have to kill Qui-Gon. It's more preferred because it's a big pain in the butt. But let's say there's 3 shields on Qui-Gon, outside of them casting a riposte, or riposte, depending on how you want to say it, you don't have big concerns there, because now his 1 and 2 shield sides are actually worth only 1 shield. And if you've killed cannon, the cautions become completely useless, as well as the odds of Force Misdirection being usable also decrease exponentially, because the only leftover die sides for you to roll are shield or resource. You don't have, most of your dice don't actually have shield sides. So like 2 of your character dice do, and then Holdout does, DH does, F11E does not, X8 does not, and LL30 does. So keep the stuff in a situation, like sometimes just killing cannon is the best play if you're killing it round 2. You are 100% looking for the round 2 kill, and you're looking to have Bala be alive during that. So I've played against Elite Kylo, single die Anakin, and have went and killed the Anakin, and it feels awful. But my thinking essentially was that Anakin has, we were playing on Throne Room, so if at any point Anakin dies in play, it's representing 3 damage. 3 damage is a lot of health, since it only takes 3 hits to actually kill any of my guys, like from that. So if I left the die on the table and he claims round 1, that's 3. If I've taken any of the Kylo 2 hits and a 2 damage, assuming they like intimidate my shields or something, Bala's actually dead. So in those situations, I had tended more to take out Anakin's die and remove it. And because the opponent had gotten Force Illusion on Kylo before I did damage to Kylo, I decided that trying to bust through 15 plus health wasn't worth it, because I had like 5 damage showing in one string. It was like 1 + 2 + 2, and then I had a focus and another die. So on that die, I could focus to a 1 and go 3 to Kylo, have him force illusion it, and then do 3 more. Or I could just focus to a 2, because he already claimed, and just deal 7 to Anakin. Dealing 7 to the Anakin felt like the best play, because in the subsequent round, I just needed to do 4 to kill him, untap Bala, and get more usage. So by doing the 4 to Anakin, I would still have a bunch of dice available. Bala would untap. I'd be able to use those dice to potentially get like a minimum of 3 damage, but it was probably about 4 value worth, and that would cement things immensely for me, because Kylo's likely to miss. Kylo's damage dice represent 2 damage max, and then if it required the resource cost, it was much harder on him, because if he was trying to cast things like No Mercy or Rise Again, which were in that deck, then I was in a fine spot, because if he's spending resources, he's limiting himself, and I could add Disrupt to that to then keep him entirely off of Rise Again. So he then has to decide, like, is he casting removal, is he trying to get the Rise Again, whatever's going on. When his damage is limited, my guys don't die, I win the game. So, like, keep in mind, it's not always just straight up go for the big guy. Things are vastly different. It's just, like, know which the big guy is. If your opponent allows you to take him out, take him out. That's just pretty much how it boils down to. Number 1 priority is getting damage however you can, but keeping Bala alive through the second round. If you're trading your Bala and not getting the untap for only like 8 damage, it's probably not worth whatever you're doing, because you started with more dice, so you have to wonder why you couldn't either A, get the kill, or keep him alive, or you deciding to play an additional weapon instead of casting the Force Illusion, because that's probably wrong. What I mean by that is this. So let's say you go into the second round, okay? Because the first round I actually prefer to play the weapon over Force Illusion, but sometimes I'll keep it because I feel like I can get that 3rd resource to then have the illusion. So we go into the second round. I've got, we'll assume I've only got 1 weapon out round 1, so I've got 6 dice. My opponent probably has 4, if not 5, depending on like if they cast like an Ancient Saber or something. So we can assume they have 5. Now, in the situation where I throw a Force Illusion down, there's pretty good odds of that stopping or threatening at least 3 damage. If they've already hit Bala for about 3, assuming, I had shields and they dealt 5, which I think is pretty fair assessment if we don't have resources and they're not ramping. We could have done He Doesn't Like Your Doubt, but you're not guaranteed to find those. But anyways, so if let's say we have 3 damage on Bala, so we're representing 5 health. If we throw a Force Illusion down, we're now representing about 8 again. 8 is really hard for them to do. Sure, Cannon could hit 2 2s, and then Qui-Gon can hit 2 2s, or they can sneak post kill you, but that's the stuff you're supposed to be looking for. So it's actually going to be very hard for them to actually take out Bala while trying to fight through your own damage, because they need to leave dice on the table to represent things like guard or force misdirection. So if the stuff's left on the table, you have access to remove it if need be. And then because we're only spending 1 on the Force Illusion, we have an available 1 to pay for pay sides, as well as to pay for things like flank or deflect now, in addition to a potential second Force Illusion, or whatever's going on. If let's say after 2 of the guys roll out, we decide we want to cast a DH or flip an X8 to a specific side. So don't think a must play the weapon, must play the weapon, must play. You don't always have to. And the big thing is that you don't have to play the weapon as the first action either. So don't just think, oh, I got to put a weapon on Bala and then roll out because he took 3 already. Sometimes you're kind of just putting yourself in a bad situation. If the opponent, so let's say the opponent claimed, then they play a big weapon out. If I don't have removal, I might roll out Bala. If not, I'm probably just going to continue with the same thing, roll out Sienna, see if I get disrupt or whatever, because if they played out a big removal, they either have no money or they have 1. So she can represent the disrupt, or show big damage, then things change a bit, and you can flip back and forth between the aggressor and the person on defense. So realistically, just keep an eye on. Checking time. Like, keep in mind that you just don't always have to go for the big guy, and see what the downfall is of trying to force through in that damage. Because if you give up Bala's effect, because you spent too long trying to bust through like a million shields, there's really no benefit to you. Yeah, like if you get the kill, you reduce their dice and you get more dice from Bala, so you win via attrition and value. There's no easy way to take the match, like in any of them. The format's much closer together. Like it just feels better because when your dice get removed, you don't feel as horrible. You can find resources more available. You can like disrupt and play the control game a little bit better. But this isn't something where Rainbow Nines was, where anytime you boundless, you just like, oh look, I won the game. That doesn't really happen in this deck. Like you could roll out 10 damage at the beginning, and sure, like people are really screwed up from there. But it's hard to really say that'll just auto win you the game. If you can hit for like 7 damage though, then yes, you are so far ahead that. Sorry, if you can hit for 7 damage without like burning all your stuff and didn't like take monster damage yourself, then you're in a severely good position. But the big thing is like keep in mind that you're wanting to stay alive. There's certain matchups where Doubt is one of the best cards, as well as he doesn't like you. So like really look at what you're mulliganing. I tend to keep a 2-drop, a 0-cost piece of removal if it's available, sometimes 2 depending on what's going on, and then I look for I look for an additional resource card. And I don't mean like a logistics, I mean I will look for, so like in gun matchups I'll be looking for a 2-drop and like a deflect, or a 2-drop and like a D17, so that because I activate Night Sister like it's one of the last actions, like the available options. I don't go like Sienna, Night Sister, do stuff, Bala. I tend to go Sienna, see what's up there. Then if I don't have logistics, then I pretty much like throw the upgrade on Bala and roll him out. And kind of just like Night Sister just stands there and waits. Because if something's going on and I need a base side because they've eaten my other base, she's more likely to hit it. So then I'd roll her out near the end, or at least threaten things like availability for like flank and whatnot, because she just stands there the whole time and doesn't do much. But if I'm planning to re-roll a bunch of dice, I might put her into the pool first. It's really dependent on like hand and what we're looking for, etc., etc. So it's not easy. I could probably record 300 games, and it's still not enough to give every piece of data. Like there's a lot of changing of stuff based on what's going on. You know, is the opponent showing the ability to synchronicity you? Do they have triple shielding? Can riposte kill your guy? Like just the different things adjust. Just know that Force Illusion is one of your better pieces of quote unquote removal. So don't always think like, oh, I have to reroll in damage because whatever. Like sometimes taking that one resource and then just sticking the safety on him is the proper play, or taking the resource so that at any point you can just stick the Force Illusion on him and survive. They're all very important, so just keep that in mind. I don't really have a preference on weapons. DH is the least preferred one in most situations, but sometimes doing DH plus a Force Illusion will keep people completely off of Bala. And if people don't go after Bala at the beginning, and they go after Sienna or Night Sister, once he gets an untap, people kind of just start to ignore him. Versus 2-character decks, once his ability is used up once, like he no longer matters, so they might just go kill the other guy and leave him as the last one. But he actually has the best die sides, because we're looking at 1-2 focus shield resource. So pretty much at no point are any of those sides actually bad. Sienna's Disrupt is terrible when your opponent already has no resources, and the resource side is awful when you have too many resources. Bala's resource side's like still available there, but you don't care nearly as much. Bait and Switch is your key card. I do not keep bait and switches in the opening unless I really feel like I need to race some crazy damage in. I'd much rather have it in subsequent rounds for sneak kills. So keep that in mind, and think if there's anything else. I don't know. Just be careful about like your pace side stuff. If the opponent's already claimed, you can decide whether you want to do stuff like X8 flip over into actual damage. Sometimes I'll flip it into damage to like threaten stuff. Don't feel bad about potentially turning it into a disrupt to take out their last resource, or potentially stop them from something that you know is going to cause you issues. So like, let's say you filped into a you filped and saw a force illusion. Like, don't necessarily feel bad about taking their last resource if it was just showing. In that situation, you probably can't flip to a disrupt side and resolve prior to them casting the illusion. But there are some weird shenanigans at times where people don't know what's going on. So like, let's say you haven't dealt damage yet, you could like pay your one to flip to a disrupt to make them cast the illusion on a guy, so you can go so you can go attack the other guy. But things like that are few and far between. Just keep stuff in mind for different things, especially if you play on anything like Rebel War Room. If you're playing against Qui-Gon Canon, you're playing on their battlefield, keep in mind that the number of actions each of you is going to take. If you can beat them in the action war, you can actually claim the battlefield and put a shield on Night Sister, and that's a reroll. So I take that. I've taken the field from them quite often if I felt whatever die was left wasn't nearly as useful, especially in the situation where it's like a shield or something. Like, I'd rather have given Night Sister a shield instead of Bala one if it's taking the battlefield from them and not giving them the shield. So hopefully this information is useful useful to you, and good luck at any of the regionals you guys are going to. You could essentially cut an F11D for an Intimidate if you were 100% adamant on needing the second Intimidate. I don't like having the additional Intimidate. I feel like you start to play much more questionably. Like, it's very great when you counter a caution with it, but it's not super duper necessary. Like, if your opponent, let's say your opponent cautions a guy, do you then go after the other guy because you're like, well, I'll draw my Intimidate, like, I have 3 damage, I can just put it into cannon and then I'll get the Intimidate and I'll like go kill Qui-Gon, or vice versa, like depending on what's going on. And sometimes that's probably the worst way to play, because you're trying to get too much value, and by trying to get too much value, sometimes you end up like screwing yourself, because maybe killing Qui-Gon was the play. Now you have riposte that can go and kill your guy because you didn't find the Intimidate and different stuff like that. Try not to be super duper greedy. Keep things in mind. If the greed gets you the win, and it's like, I don't know, somewhere between like 30 and 60%, sometimes it's worth it. But if the greed is like, I'm going to pitch my Force Illusion because I want to, try to get 1 more damage or a resource instead of taking the shield, I don't really agree with it. If you had no base sides, or you had like multiple modifiers, they just ate your last base side, that's different, because that Force Illusion is going to be worth potentially multiple more things via like resource, shield, 1 damage. But if you're just trying to be really greedy because your Bala is showing a shield and you don't want to take it, or your Bala is showing a resource and you don't want it in the next round, like, it doesn't make real sense. Sometimes you just want to take the resource, smash your Force Illusion down, and go to the next round. But, alright, Honest Sarcastic out of here. Let me know if you guys have questions. I'll try to answer what I can. But today's Black Friday, and yeah, the next few days just doesn't exist to me. So, you guys have a good day. Hyperloop out.